I still remember the exact words, spat out like they were gospel truth during that godforsaken family barbecue in the summer of 2015. We were crammed onto the sagging deck of my parents' old split level in suburban Ohio, the air thick with charcoal smoke and the buzz of yellow jackets dive-bombing the potato salad. Aunt Karen, my mom's older sister, the one who'd always carried herself like she was one rung above the rest of us on some invisible ladder, had just finished bragging about her latest investment, a timeshare in Myrtle Beach that she swore was the key to her golden years. She was nursing a plastic cup of boxed wine, her lipstick smudged on the rim, and her eyes were glassy from the heat or maybe the third helping of ribs. I'd been quiet most of the afternoon, nursing a beer and trying to tune out the usual family noise. My brother Mike was chasing his toddler nephew, little Ethan, all chubby cheeks and sticky fingers, around the yard, while cousin Sarah hovered nearby, scrolling her phone and pretending not to eavesdrop. Mom Lisa was fluttering between the grill where Dad Tom was flipping burgers with that focused squint he got when he was avoiding small talk. And then Karen turned to me, her voice slicing through the chatter like a dull knife. "Oh, Jamie," she said, drawing out my name like it tasted sour. "You're what, 28 now? Still grinding away at that little IT gig? Honey, let me give you some real advice. You'll never own a vacation home. Not in this economy. Stick to your cubicle dreams and leave the beach houses to people who actually know how to make money." The table went quiet for a beat, just long enough for the crickets to start up in the grass. Mike shot me a look, half pity, half don't engage. And Sarah let out this awkward snort that she tried to pass off as a cough. Mom busied herself with refilling the ketchup bottle, her cheeks flushing that way they did when Karen got mean. Dad just grunted and turned another burger, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened under that salt and pepper stubble. I forced a laugh, the kind that bubbles up when you want to cry instead. "Yeah, well, Aunt Karen, maybe I'll surprise you one day." It came out weaker than I meant, my voice cracking just a hair on the end. Inside, though, it burned. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger that makes you yell. More like a slow ember, the type that settles in your gut and simmers for years. Who says shit like that to their niece? At a family cookout, no less? Karen just waved it off with a manicured hand, her rings catching the sun, and launched into a story about how she'd networked her way into that timeshare deal. Everyone nodded along, because that's what you do with Karen. She's the success story, the one who moved to Charlotte after high school, married Uncle Greg, a mid-level accountant who mostly just nodded in agreement, and clawed her way into a real estate job that let her lord her commissions over us peasants back home. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, the walls still papered with that faded floral print Mom refused to change. The house smelled like bug spray and leftover coleslaw, and I could hear Dad's snores rumbling through the vents. I replayed Karen's words on loop, picking them apart like a bad code snippet at work. "You'll never own a vacation home." It wasn't just about the house, it was about me. The girl who'd scraped through community college on grants and night shifts at the diner. The one who'd landed a junior sysadmin job at a mid-sized logistics firm in Columbus because it paid enough to cover rent on a one-bedroom that flooded every spring. The one who, at 28, still had $4,200 in student loans hanging over her head and a car that wheezed like an asthmatic on the highway. Karen saw that and decided it was permanent. A verdict. I didn't cry. Not then. But I did something better. I started a spreadsheet. Right there on my cracked laptop screen, under the harsh glow of the desk lamp. Column A, current savings, $2,300. Column B, monthly income, $3,800 after taxes. Column C, expenses, rent $950, student loan $280, groceries $400, gas $150, miscellaneous $300. God, that miscellaneous line was a black hole. At the bottom, a projection. If I cut out the $50 a month Spotify and brew coffee at home instead of Starbucks, how long until I could afford a down payment on something? Not a beachfront mansion, obviously, but maybe a condo, a cabin in the woods. Hell, even a trailer by a lake. Anything to prove her wrong. The next morning, over Mom's week diner coffee, I told her about it. She was at the kitchen table, flipping through the coupons in the Sunday paper, her hair still in rollers from the night before. "Karen didn't mean it, Jamie," she said, not looking up. "She's just Karen, always talking before thinking." Yeah, well, maybe it's time I stopped listening. I stirred in too much sugar, watching it dissolve like my patience. Mom sighed, the kind that carried years of sibling shorthand I didn't fully understand. Karen had always been the golden child, top of her class, first to leave home, the one who sent Christmas cards with glossy photos from ski trips. Mom stayed behind, raised 2 kids on a nurse's salary and Dad's factory shifts, and somehow made it look like enough. But I could hear the old hurt in her voice, the echo of 1,000 jabs over family holidays. Work that week was the usual grind. I sat in my cubicle farm at Logitech Solutions, surrounded by the hum of servers and the faint mildew scent from the carpet that never quite aired out. My boss, Derek, a balding guy in his 40s who wore ties with cartoon characters on them, dropped a new project on my desk Friday afternoon. Jamie, you're on point for the cloud migration. Clients breathing down my neck. Make it happen by Q3. No please, no buffer. Just the expectation that I'd pull another all-nighter, debugging scripts while the rest of the team clocked out at 5. I nodded, already mentally mapping the overtime. But overtime meant money, and money meant that spreadsheet ticking closer to reality. So I dove in. Nights blurred into weekends. Code reviews at 2 a.m., cold pizza for dinner. Mike crashing on my couch every other Saturday with Ethan in tow, turning my living room into a Lego minefield. Mike was my rock through it all. 2 years older, a mechanic at the Ford plant, divorced a year back from his high school sweetheart, Jess. He'd show up with takeout from that greasy Thai place on High Street, plop Ethan on a blanket with his trucks, and just listen while I vented. Family's family, Jay, he'd say, cracking open a beer. But Karen? She's got that chip on her shoulder bigger than Lake Erie. Remember when she skipped Grandma's funeral to close a deal? Mom still hasn't forgiven her. I'd nod, bouncing Ethan on my knee while he gummed a teething ring. It's not just the house thing. It's like she looks at me and sees failure. Like I'm her reminder of what she escaped. Mike would snort, ruffling Ethan's downy hair. You're the smart one, kid. We're all just waiting for you to lap the field. By fall, the migration project wrapped early. My doing, though Derek took the credit in the team meeting. The client rep, a sharp woman named Carla from their Cleveland office, pulled me aside after. That was solid work, Jamie. Ever think about consulting on your own? She slipped me her card, embossed with gold lettering. I pocketed it like a talisman. Thanksgiving that year was at Karen's, a sprawling ranch style in a gated Charlotte suburb, all beige carpets and framed motivational prints. Dream big. Uncle Greg manned the turkey, basting it with that same nervous efficiency he brought to everything, while Sarah and her husband, Ben, chased their golden retriever around the dining room. Karen held court at the table, regaling us with tales of her latest flip. A bungalow in Raleigh she'd bought for $180K, gutted, and sold for $240K in 6 months. It's all about vision, she said, spearing a cranberry with her fork. You can't just wait for opportunity. You seize it. I bit my tongue, focusing on the mashed potatoes. But when she turned to me later, over pumpkin pie and decaf, it slipped out. So, Jamie, any big plans? Still at that IT place. Yep, I said, keeping it light. Wrapped a big project. Thinking about branching out. She arched an eyebrow, that perfectly plucked one. Branching out? Like what, freelancing? Oh, sweetie, that's risky. Stick to the steady paycheck. Real estate's where the money is, if you can handle it. Mike, across the table, caught my eye and mouthed, ignore her. But the ember flared again. I excused myself early, drove back to Columbus in the rain, windows fogging up from my breath. That night, I emailed Carla. Tell me more about consulting. The new year brought changes I didn't see coming. Logitech hit a rough patch, layoffs whispered in the break room, the coffee machine broken for weeks. Derek called me into his office on a Tuesday in February, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. Jamie, you're great. Really. But we're streamlining. Need to let you go. He slid an envelope across the desk, severance, 2 months' pay, and wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked out numb, the winter wind slapping my face in the parking lot. My Sentra wouldn't start right away, the battery whining like it felt the same defeat. Called Mom from the Cracker Barrel lot, picking at a biscuit while tears blurred the checkered tablecloth. It's okay, baby, she said, her voice thick. You'll land on your feet. You always do. But landing meant hustling. I filed for unemployment, polished my resume, and fired off applications. In the meantime, Carla's card burned a hole in my wallet. I reached out, and she connected me with a startup in Pittsburgh, remote contract work, migrating their legacy systems to AWS. It paid 20% more than Logitech, but it was gig-based, no benefits. I took it. Then another from a nonprofit in DC, then a boutique firm in Atlanta. By spring, I was juggling 3 clients, billing hours from my kitchen table, the laptop fan whirring like a jet engine. Money started trickling in, not floods, but steady streams. I slashed expenses further. No more cable, generic groceries, carpooling with Mike to save on gas. The spreadsheet updated weekly, that down payment line creeping up. $5,000 by June. $12,000 by Christmas. But life doesn't spreadsheet neatly. In July, Dad had a heart scare, mild arrhythmia, nothing major, but it landed him in the ER overnight. Mom called me at midnight, her voice a whisper over the hospital payphone hum. "He's stable, Jamie. Just come home if you can." I drove through the night, rain sheeting the windshield, radio static crackling with old country tunes. At the hospital, Dad was propped up in bed, tubes snaking to a monitor, looking smaller than the man who'd taught me to change a tire at 16. "Hey, kiddo," he rasped, squeezing my hand. "Heard you got canned. Tough break." "Yeah, well," I said, forcing a smile. "Turns out I make a better freelancer than employee." Mom hovered, adjusting his pillow, her nurse scrubs wrinkled from the shift. "Karen called this morning. Said she'd send over some leads from her network. Real estate contacts, mostly." I almost laughed. "Tell her thanks, but I've got it covered." Dad chuckled, wincing a little. "That's my girl. Don't let her rent space in your head." He recovered, back to the factory by September, but the scare shifted something in me. Family wasn't just blood. It was the quiet support, the late-night drives, the unspoken "we've got you." Karen's leads never materialized, of course. A form email from her assistant, CC'd to Mom for show. "Best of luck in your endeavors." I deleted it without replying. Freelancing ramped up. I networked on LinkedIn, cold emailed VCs, even started a blog, dry stuff on cloud security, but it landed me a speaking gig at a tech meetup in Cleveland. $500 honorarium, plus the glow of standing in front of 40 strangers without puking. Carla became a mentor of sorts, coffee chats over Zoom where she'd grill me on rates and boundaries. Charge what you're worth, Jamie. Women like us? We undervalue by default. By 2018, the spreadsheet hit $45,000. Enough for 20% down on a modest place, if I found the right deal. I dreamed small at first, a fixer-upper in the Smokies, maybe. But then I stumbled on a listing during a late-night scroll. Outer Banks, North Carolina. A 2-bedroom cottage on the Sound Side in Corolla. Not oceanfront, but close, beachy enough, with dunes rolling out back and the salt air that hit you like a promise. Built in the 80s, it needed work. Popcorn ceilings, outdated kitchen, a deck that sagged like it remembered too many storms. Listed at $320,000. I ran the numbers obsessively, mortgage payments I'd cover with 2 solid contracts, equity building like compound interest on revenge. I flew down on a whim, using a client expense for the ticket. Walked the property on a gray October morning, wind whipping my hair, the realtor. A wiry guy named Hal with a Carolina drawl, pointing out the charm. "Views like this don't last," he said, gesturing to the water glittering through the pines. I could see it, mornings with coffee on that deck, Ethan building sandcastles, Mike firing up a grill without the Ohio humidity. My place. Earned. Back home, I crunched final figures with a financial advisor. Rachel, a no-nonsense woman from the credit union who'd seen my spreadsheet printout and nodded approvingly. "You're disciplined. That's half the battle." Closing was January 2019. I signed the papers in a stuffy conference room, pen shaking just a bit, then drove the 10 hours south alone, radio blasting Springsteen. The cottage smelled like mildew and possibility when I unlocked the door, keys heavy in my palm. Renovations ate the next year. I budgeted $40,000, new roof, gutted bath, LVP floors that didn't squeak. Hired local crews. Javier for the demo, his team blasting Tejano from a boombox while they hauled out the old cabinets. Lena for the paint, a single mom from Kill Devil Hills who shared stories of her twins over lunch breaks. Weekends, I'd drive down from Columbus, Mike tagging along when he could, Ethan toddling around in his tiny tool belt. "Aunt Jamie's beach house," he'd yell, waving a plastic hammer. Family reactions trickled in. Mom cried when I FaceTimed her the keys, happy tears, the kind that wrinkle her eyes. Dad sent a card. "Proud as hell, kid." Mike threw an impromptu barbecue on the new deck that summer, inviting Sarah and Ben, even Jess tagging along with their daughter, now 4 in all legs. To the queen of comebacks, Mike toasted, clinking his bottle to mine. Karen, radio silence until Labor Day weekend, 2020. The world was still reeling from the pandemic. Masks mandatory, beaches half empty. But I'd listed the cottage on Airbnb as a side hustle, bookings steady enough to cover the mortgage. Mom called me Thursday night, her voice hesitant over the static. Jamie? Karen's in a bit of a bind. Lost her job, real estate market tanked with the lockdowns. Greg's hours got cut at the firm. She asked if she could borrow against that timeshare of hers. But it's underwater now. Anyway, she wondered about your place. For a week or two. To clear her head. I paused, stirring pasta sauce on my stove, the steam fogging the window. Borrow? From me? The ember I'd banked for years flickered back to life. Not angry, exactly, but sharp. What did you tell her? I said I'd ask. But Jamie, she's family. And she's humbled. Said something about how she was wrong about you. Humbled. The word hung there, absurd. I pictured Karen in my cottage, her designer tote slung over the porch rail, critiquing the quartz counters I'd picked for being too trendy. But then I thought of that barbecue, her wine-stained cup, the way she'd sized me up like a listing gone bad. This wasn't about punishment. It was about balance. Tell her she can rent it, I said finally. Full rate. 2 weeks max. Mom exhaled, relieved. You're a better person than me, kiddo. The booking came through that night. Airbnb pinged my phone, Karen's profile pic staring back. Same smug smile from Facebook, now filtered through desperation. She arrived Saturday, Greg's SUV packed like they were fleeing a disaster. I wasn't there, had a client deadline, but Mike was, handing over keys with a grin I could hear over the phone. She looks like she swallowed a lemon, Jay, complained about the drive. They stayed 10 days. Reviews poured in. 4 stars for cleanliness, 3 for location. A bit rustic, she noted. Paid on time, left the place spotless. Greg's doing probably. Then, a week later, another ping. Not a booking, a message. Jamie, it's Karen. That was lovely. Any chance for November? Holidays are tight this year. I stared at the screen, fork halfway to my mouth, leftover stir-fry cooling. November meant peak season rates, $350 a night. For her. The woman who'd written me off. I typed back slow, fingers deliberate. Sure. Availability check attached. Deposit due up front. She bit, booked 3 weeks, full price. Greg messaged separately, awkward. Thanks for this. Means a lot. I didn't reply. Word spread in the family chat, Mom's group text lighting up with emojis. Sarah. Wait, Karen is renting from Jamie? Iconic face with tears of joy, Mike. Payback's a beach. Even Jess chimed in. Proud of you, girl. Karen called after the second stay, voice softer than I'd ever heard, tinny over the spotty Outer Banks signal. Jamie? It's Aunt Karen. Listen, I owe you an apology. Back at that barbecue, what I said. It was cruel. I was projecting, I guess. My own insecurities. You've built something real here. I'm proud. Proud. There it was again. I leaned against my kitchen counter, the one with the butcher block top scarred from too many hurried meals. Part of me wanted to unload. Tell her how her words had lodged like a splinter, how I'd built walls around that hurt until it fueled every late night, every cold call. But the truth? I didn't need her absolution. I'd already claimed it, square foot by square foot. It's water under the bridge, I said instead. Glad you enjoyed it. We hung up, and I poured a glass of wine. Not boxed, but a decent Pinot from the local shop. Stepped out onto my tiny balcony overlooking the Scioto River, city lights smearing the water like stars. The spreadsheet was long deleted, replaced by a rental dashboard humming with bookings. Client steady, a 4th under my belt. A SaaS company in Austin paying 6 figures annually. Life wasn't perfect, freelance taxes sucked. Ethan was starting to ask why Aunt Jamie didn't have a real job like Daddy. But it was mine. Karen booked again for spring break, then summer. Each time, the rate ticked up with demand. She'd text small talk now. Weather's turning, deck holding up? I'd reply polite, distant. Mike joked it was my karma condo, but it felt more like quiet victory. The girl from the cubicle, the one with the flooding apartment and the doubting aunt, had rewritten the script. Last month, she messaged about Christmas. Peak rates for $150 per night, 2-week minimum. Greg's retiring early, she wrote. Thought we'd make it a tradition. I approved it, watching the deposit hit my account. $6,300 up front. Enough for a new hot tub, or maybe that treehouse for Ethan. As I sit here now, laptop warm on my thighs, the house quiet except for the fridge's hum, I think about that ember. It didn't burn me down, it forged something solid. Karen's not the villain in this story, not really, just a mirror, cracked and reflecting back the doubts we all carry. But me? I looked into that mirror and built a view worth waking up to. And if she ever wonders why the rental agreement has that fine print about no timeshare pitches on the deck, well, that's just good business. After all, some lessons you pay full price to learn.